Shabbat Shalom, Chaverim. Shabbat Shalom, greetings and salutations. Welcome. Thanks for being with us. These are minutes of the end of the year, and around us in Beit Emmanuel, we are winding down, and I invite you to stay with us in 2022. We are going to say where do we need volunteers and for what things are we asking for you. And we'd like you to come and express yourself in our different teams that work and do things for the benefit of the whole community. That's one message I wanted to start with. The second thing is that in this sermon, I'm going to start with the contemporary matters, then to give some example how Judaism relates to it, and then I'm going to end with the Weekly Parashat. Now that sometimes people find it hard to follow where I'm going, so I'm telling you in advance where I'm going. And the contemporary matter I'd like to discuss today is the Shell business, the Shell survey and energy which was found, and the survey which is being held and its potential damages. If you haven't been around in South Africa in the last weeks, that is the main thing that is discussed in the social networks and in the news. And as there is here from one side a big business endeavor which holds a lot of money, and from the other side honest danger to the wild coast and all the creatures who live it. And as said fully at current phase of our development, the coast and the vegetation and the animals don't have legal rights and don't have a voice. We thus have to be the voice for them and to express their views. And the least that I can do on my ability, the least is to bring some of what Jewish tradition has to say in this regard. Some of it is the law and the proverb, and some of it is the halacha, the law. There is some of it in the law and some of it in the law. Because the halacha, the Jewish law, has something to say about anything in the world. There is nothing which is not under the kind of jurisdiction of halacha. Halacha is in a position to make a statement about any matters with regard to the ethics of halacha and how things should manage. Now, such a case with such minerals and so on, you cannot find, because that was never under the jurisdiction of the halacha. But cases with similar principle you can find, and I'm going to bring to you some of those cases which I find similarities on the principle, when the question is how to balance and how to protect between the private and the public. What is private, what is public, and the main term that Judaism uses is Reshut Harabim. Reshut Harabim. Reshut is the authority, the domain, and Harabim is of the plural, of the many, the public space, the public sphere. So when we are coming and we need to adjudicate and we need to make a balance and make a verdict, what belongs to the individual and what belongs to the many, then Judaism has a lot of what to say in this regard in different realms of the traditional Jewish law. So for example, there is a limitation to what you can or cannot do. Even within your own field, there is a limitation to what you can and cannot do. But even further, when it comes to the public domain, let me give you one example. Baba Kama, page 50, folio B, the sages said, a person should never throw stones from his property into the public domain. Okay, you are now cleaning your field. You cannot just throw it to the public domain, to the path, when later on wagons and peoples and donkeys need to pass. You cannot destroy and disuse the public domain. Then there is a piece of law. I told you the law and the law coming together, mainly in the Talmud. An incident occurred one. A certain individual who was throwing stones from his field to the public domain. A master sage found him and told him, hey, why do you do this? For what reason are you throwing stone from this property? This property is not even yours, and you're throwing it to the property which is yours. He said, this property is not even yours, and you're throwing it to the property which is yours. And the man mocked him and said, no, I'm the landlord, this is my land, and I'll do whatever I want in that. Years later, he lost his money and he had to sell his field from which he had thrown the stones. And then he was walking on the same public domain, looking at his old field in his property that he had to sell, and say, now, and he stumbled upon the same stones, and he stumbled upon the same stone that he threw up when he was cleaning the field. And he says, now I understand what that master sage say. Why are you throwing stone from property that is not yours into the property which is yours? Since now the field no longer belongs to me, only the public domain remains mine to use. So here's the lesson. The money can come and the money can go. Those who have money today might not have the money tomorrow, but the damage to the public domain, the damage to the public sphere is done, and one has to deal with it, to take responsibility on that. So the basic attitude of Judaism on that regard is do not make a damage to the public domain. Do not interrupt it, do not misuse it, and do not allow it to be deteriorated. Okay. Case number 2. Now we're looking on balancing between different principles that needs to be done. And here the Maimonides speak about laws of kings. And he says the following, it's in Mishneh Torah, Kings 6:8. He's talking about, he starts from during war, and then he says not even during war, even in regular times. Hear about his environmental concept of Maimonides. Even in times of war, have in your mind siege on ancient times, and so said Maimonides, fruit-bearing trees must never be cut down outside of the city. Fruit-bearing trees must never be cut down out of the city, nor do we block the irrigation water, causing the trees to dry. As it says, thou shalt not destroy her trees, Deuteronomy 20:19. Anyone who cuts down the tree receive a tree, anyone cuts down a fruit-bearing tree received lashes, flogging. This is the law. This is not only in times of siege, but anyone at any time who chopped down a fruit-bearing tree by a destructive purpose receives lashes. The tree may not be cut down if it is damaging other trees. The case when you can cut it, the tree may be cut down if it is damaging other trees or it is damaging another one field, or because the tree is more valuable for its wood than for its fruit. If it's more valuable for its wood than for its fruit, then the Torah enables it. All other cases, the Torah forbids to use the word wanton, unthinkful, unmindful, wanton destruction. You may not just go to the nature and destroy. But what's interesting is that Maimonides is trying to balance between the environmental logic and the financial logic, the business logic. But if you think you're going to sell it for the wood and it will be more profitable as wood than as for fruit, then you may do so. And this is kind of the what we are trying to do as well, to understand the balance between the different interests, between the economical interests, between the environmental interests, when the halacha gives us guidelines of what we can and what we cannot do within the realm of economical social relationship, within the economical social tissue. Okay. Now another case that's in Bava Batra 22b, 23a. The Gemara relates, she tells a story, and the stories bring us to halacha. Rabbi Yosef, Rav Yosef, had small palm trees. He had a date orchard, and butchers would come and sit beneath them and perform their work there, do the butchery they need to do. So the crows would come there, eat the blood, and fly to the palm trees and damage the date palms. Okay, situation, somebody else has a job which has pollution, in this case, carcass and blood and so on from the butchery, and it damages his fruit. So there is an environmental concern which is damaging someone else's goods, the property of someone else. Then there's a whole discussion. Rabbi Yosef said to the butchers, you got to remove that, telling him, oh, sorry, we're just doing our work. The crows come because the crows come. He says, no, the crows come because of you. There's a whole debate. Let me conclude the story. It goes like half a page in the Talmud. Maimonides summarizes it up. So Maimonides summarizes the halacha in such cases, and he puts it right. Listen. Apply with regard to person who has established himself in a profession involving pollution, blood animal, and like that in his premises, and ravens or other birds of the type would come because of the blood. While doing so, they cause discomfort to the neighbor person and the blood of the feet, and they sit on the neighbor's tree and soil his produce, and they destroy his produce. If the neighbor take issue, is irritable or sick to that, then, or his produce are spoiled because of that, the person performing the task must cease or must separate the extent that the neighbor does not suffer from harm anymore. So this is an example, one of many, in which the jurisdiction of Judaism says the halachic principle is that a business has accountability, responsibility, which is environmental, and he is accountable. He's accountable for whatever damage environmental he might use to the business of other people. Those are but 3 out of many that can be found example about how Judaism regard the environmental matter, again, mainly on the halachic perspective, which halacha defines the relationship between a person and another. So the Jewish ethos is an ethos of consideration and concern to the common interest and to justice which today would call environmental justice and distributive justice. And as same as last week, we were greeting and blessing the people of the campaign of Defend Our Democracy and the anti-corruption week we had last week. This week I bless and associate myself with all those who toil and endeavor and struggle for the wild cause, the mineral, the vegetation, and the creatures who live in that. I'm calling us all to be informed, to be involved. I'm calling Shell Company to prove that she doesn't have anything to hide, and that we are within our rights to be vigilant, we are within our rights to be concerned, and if they would like us to trust them, then the burden of proof is upon them to show that they are transparent and honest. And naturally, I'm calling all the many governmental authorities who are dealing with it to do their job properly and open the eyes clearly and be very clear about the rights of the public. I'd like to conclude with some matters, one from the Parashat of the Weekly Parashat. In this Parashat, we see how Joseph is organizing the land of Egypt. And what he's doing, Joseph, is accumulating the land, is a concentration of the lands in the hands of the main regime of the pharaohs, and people are losing their lands, the standholds, the free small standing that they used to have, and then they are being moved. First, they are in debt to the state, they owe money to the state, then the state takes them and uses them as slaves. And this is the phase when Egypt is going through a pauperization. People become poor. You can check it, Genesis 49. And then they're being pushed to the cities, and the cities, they have to do forced labor. This is the phase when the Israelites are like, hey, we're actually Semitic, let's go back to the land of Canaan. I'd like to, following Rabbi Arthur Waskow in his book, God Wrestling, it's a classic book of progressive and renewed Judaism, 1978, God Wrestling. He says the message is not just the prophecy about the 7 good years and the 7 bad years, but also the message of life, that if we plow in the field again and again and again, and there will be 7 good years, but there will also be 7 bad years. And the remedy for that is the Shemitah, the sabbatical year in which we are letting the land to rest, and we listen to the message of the land, what the land is telling us. That's Rabbi Arthur Waskow about the Weekly Parashat on that sense. And finally, regarding Hanukkah, that we spoke several times how the story of Hanukkah had shifted its core, shifted its emphasis. And maybe today, when we're looking on the climate crisis and on the question of energy and our attempt to move away from fossils and our dependent in fossils, then maybe we can see the candle that should have been, that the energy was enough for 1 day, but actually it lasted for 8 days as a calling to find new way how to energize ourselves, not to wait from a miracle from above, but do in our wisdom, in our progress, in our commitment, in our responsibility, save fossil energy and save the planet. And Rabbi Waskow speaks about the vision of Zechariah that we read last Shabbat, the 2 olive branches who are miraculously in a miracle way, in a magical way. They are feeding the menorah. They're feeding the menorah, the two olive branches in the vision of Zechariah, as a calling to stand in a covenant with the creation, with all creation, taking responsibility. We are the stewards. It's in our custody. We foster the creation, humans, and the human elevation of the spirit, the holy deed of humans, and our covenant with all the species that share the planet with us. Then Hanukkah will become a new way of exercise, a new way of spiritual endeavor, when we are practicing the political activism, the environmental activism, the empathy, the emotional empathy, the environmental intelligence, how we are more intelligent, and how we have a learning curve about intelligent environmental intelligence, and a spirit which is nourished by awe to the all creation, the neshama, the soul, and the neshima, the breath that unites all the living creatures. That's my message in this regard, and I hope we will grow to that space. Surely, we are going to stay vigilant and updated about what's going on in the wild course, and you know, we are within our rights to be suspicious. Okay, we are absolutely within our rights to be suspicious. So we are, and we are not alone. There are many people who are working in this regard, but we cannot be indifferent. So that's my message for today. And thanks.